Have you ever looked at your life and thought, I should be happy right now? The career you worked so hard for? You have it. The income that once seemed impossible? You've achieved it. The relationships, the status, the stability, all there. And yet, something feels empty, hollow, like you're living someone else's definition of success. You wake up with a heaviness that your morning coffee ritual can't dissolve. You drag yourself through days that blend together. Monday becomes, Friday becomes, Monday again, and you wonder where the time went, why it feels so insignificant. You check all the boxes, meet all the deadlines, show up to all the gatherings. Your Instagram shows a life of meaningful moments. Your LinkedIn broadcasts achievement after achievement. You're what everyone calls a person who knows what they want. But deep inside, there's this nagging question that keeps you awake at 3 a.m. Is this really it? Is this all there is? And perhaps most frustrating of all, you keep making the same mistakes, the same relationship patterns, the same self-sabotage, the same empty promises to yourself. It's as if some invisible force keeps pulling you back into these loops, despite your best intentions. Here's the truth that no productivity hack or wellness trend will tell you. You're not lazy. That's not why you feel stuck. You're not weak. That's not why you keep repeating patterns. You're not broken. There's nothing fundamentally wrong with you. You're just too good at ignoring yourself. Not the self you present to the world. Not the self that achieves and performs, but the deeper self beneath all of that. The self with the uncomfortable emotions, the inconvenient desires, the parts that don't fit neatly into your curated life. These parts haven't disappeared just because you've ignored them. They've been pushed down so deep that now they're running. The show from the shadows. Carl Jung, one of the most profound psychologists of the 20th century, recognized this dynamic. He put it this way: until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life, and you will call it fate, or more, directly. You are not free because you don't know who is controlling you. That feeling of invisible fatigue, it's the exhaustion that comes from constantly fighting against parts of yourself, from maintaining a divided psyche where what you acknowledge and what you deny are at war with each other. True freedom, true energy, true peace, these don't come from achievement. They come from integration, from becoming whole. If this resonates with you, hit the like button. The algorithm helps those who help themselves. Let's talk about the shadow. Not the shadow that follows you on a sunny day, but the shadow that follows you through life. The collection of all the parts of yourself that you've deemed unacceptable, inappropriate, or shameful. Your jealousy when a friend succeeds. Your secret desire for recognition. Your anger that simmers beneath the surface. Your selfishness that you try to hide behind noble reasons. Your occasional wish that someone else would fail. Your capacity for cruelty, pettiness, and spite. Each of us carries these shadows, though the specific content differs. What's in your shadow depends on what you've been taught is unacceptable. If you were raised to believe that anger is never appropriate, your anger goes into the shadow. If you were taught that neediness is weakness, your vulnerability gets banished. Jung discovered something revolutionary. The shadow isn't some evil force to be conquered. It's simply the part of you that has been denied expression. But here's the brutal paradox. The more you push your shadow down, the more power it gains over you. Think about it. When was the last time you saw a friend succeed and felt that twinge of envy? If you're like most high-functioning people, you probably smiled, congratulated them, and then told yourself, I'm happy for them. I'm not the kind of person who gets jealous. But inside something was gnawing at you. That feeling didn't disappear just because you denied it. It went underground and began to work in ways you didn't recognize. Maybe you started finding subtle flaws in their achievement. Maybe you withdrew slightly from the friendship. Maybe you pushed yourself harder at work to the point of burnout. This is the shadow at work. Not because you acknowledge these difficult emotions, but precisely because you didn't. And here's where modern culture has failed us completely. We live in the age of toxic positivity. Good vibes only. No negativity. Allowed, just be grateful. These mantras seem helpful on the surface, but Jung would tell you they're creating a pressure cooker of repressed emotion. The more you try to be positive, the stronger your shadow becomes. The more you try to be nothing but light, the deeper your darkness grows. Consider the person who's going through a divorce, struggling financially, or facing a health issue, who posts nothing but inspirational quotes. The facade of positivity doesn't heal their pain. It compounds it by adding the burden of inauthenticity. The high-functioning millennial is especially vulnerable to this trap. You've been conditioned to present a curated version of yourself. Competent, put together, always growing, always optimizing. You were the gifted child who couldn't show struggle, the responsible one who couldn't display need. Meanwhile, your doubt, your fatigue, your resentment, your confusion, these are treated as weaknesses to overcome rather than messages to be heard, parts to be fixed rather than integrated. This isn't just psychologically damaging. It's the direct path to burnout. That state of exhaustion isn't happening because you're not disciplined enough. It's happening because you've been at war with half of who you are. As Jung put it, everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves, those qualities you can't stand in other people. They're often the very same qualities that exist in your own shadow. The person whose neediness annoys you is reflecting your own disowned vulnerability. The colleague whose ambition you judge is mirroring your own suppressed desire for recognition. The friend whose emotional outbursts make you uncomfortable is expressing what you've been taught to contain. The shadow isn't your enemy. Denying it is. If you've ever felt the crushing weight of always having to be on, always having to be positive, drop a comment below. You're not alone, and naming it is the first step toward freedom. Have you ever wondered why your life seems to follow certain patterns? Why you keep finding yourself in the same situations, even with completely different people? Maybe it's the relationship that starts with intense passion, only to devolve into the same power struggles as your last 3 relationships. Maybe it's the job that initially seemed perfect, until you realized you were once again overworking to prove your worth to an authority figure who can never be satisfied. Maybe it's the friendship where you're always giving, always supporting, always putting their needs before your own. These aren't coincidences. Something much deeper is at play. Jung would tell you that you're not just acting from your individual experiences. You're drawing from what he called the collective unconscious, a shared reservoir of human experience that transcends your personal history and connects you to all of humanity. This isn't metaphysical speculation. It's a psychological reality that manifests in our dreams, behaviors, and in the stories human beings have told across cultures and throughout history. Within this collective unconscious live what Jung called archetypes, universal patterns of behavior and meaning that appear across all cultures and all times. Think of them as the basic character templates of human experience, the hero who embarks on a journey and returns transformed, the trickster who disrupts the status quo with cleverness, the wise one who offers guidance and deep knowing, the caregiver who nurtures and protects others, the lover who seeks connection, beauty, and passion, the destroyer who brings necessary endings. These aren't just abstract concepts. They're energetic patterns that live within each of us, shaping how we see ourselves, how we relate to others, and how we move through the world. Think about your relationships. Do you always find yourself being the responsible one? The one who fixes everything? Do you repeatedly fall into the role of the healer, taking care of others while neglecting yourself? Do you constantly sacrifice your needs for the sake of keeping peace? These patterns aren't random. They're archetypes at work in your life. And for the high-functioning millennial, there's one archetype that shows up with devastating frequency: the rescuer. You know this one intimately, don't you? The person who's always available to solve everyone else's problems. The one who says yes when they mean no. The one who carries the emotional and practical burden for their entire social circle. The rescuer believes their value comes from what they can do for others. They've internalized the message that their needs come last. They find it nearly impossible to ask for help because they're supposed to be the helper. Sound familiar? Look around at your friends who are burning out in helping professions. Look at those who are exhausted from emotional labor. Look at yourself, perhaps, constantly putting out fires for everyone else, while your own needs smolder unattended. This archetype didn't emerge in a vacuum. It was infused into you through your family dynamics, your cultural conditioning, your early experiences of love and belonging. You didn't choose it consciously, but it chose you. And now it's directing your life like an invisible puppet master. The most insidious part? When these archetypal patterns cause suffering, we blame ourselves as individuals. We think there's something wrong with us, rather than recognizing we're caught in an ancient pattern that's bigger than our individual choices. Liberation begins with recognition. When you can name the archetype that's been running your life, you gain the psychological distance needed to make different choices. You can say, there's the rescuer trying to take over again, rather than automatically jumping in to fix everyone's problems. The pattern doesn't disappear overnight. Archetypes don't simply vanish once you've spotted them, but awareness creates space between stimulus and response. Space creates the possibility of choice, and choice, conscious choice, is the beginning of freedom. If you recognize yourself as the rescuer, always helping others at your own expense, hit subscribe. The journey to reclaiming your life starts with seeing these patterns clearly. If this content is helping you understand yourself better, please take a moment to like this video and share it with someone who might need this perspective. What if I told you that every night a part of you is trying to communicate? That while you sleep, the wisest aspects of your psyche are sending messages that could transform your waking life? This isn't mystical speculation. This is what Jung discovered through decades of careful observation. Dreams aren't random firings of a resting brain. They're communications from the deeper parts of your psyche, parts that see more clearly and know more fully than your everyday awareness. When you dream of falling, your unconscious might be telling you that you're losing control in your waking life or pushing yourself too hard toward an unsustainable goal. When you dream of being chased, perhaps a part of you is trying to avoid a truth that needs to be faced, an emotion that needs to be felt, or an aspect of yourself that requires acknowledgement. When you dream of a house with unexplored rooms, your psyche might be revealing parts of yourself that remain undiscovered, with potential waiting to be claimed. These aren't interpretations from a dream dictionary. They're communications uniquely crafted for you, using a symbolic language as old as humanity itself, but personalized through your specific associations and experiences. For Jung, dreams weren't problems to be solved or puzzles to be decoded. They were experiences to be entered, stories to be witnessed, messages to be received. They were doorways into the unconscious, offering glimpses of what lies beneath the surface of our everyday awareness. This is where modern approaches to dreams often go wrong. In our rationalist, efficiency-obsessed culture, we try to analyze dreams logically, to extract their meaning as if they were encrypted data rather than living communications. Dreams don't speak the language of logic and utility. They speak the language of the souls, as embolies emotional, intuitive, non-linear. So how do you approach them? How do you learn to listen to these nightly messengers? Start by simply recording them. Keep a journal by your bed and write down your dreams immediately upon waking. Before they evaporate in the light of day, write down everything you remember without judgment or interpretation. Don't rush to interpret. Don't immediately Google, what does it mean when you dream about X? Instead, sit with the dream. Let it resonate. Let it continue to speak to you throughout your day. Then, instead of asking, what does this mean? A question that assumes there's a single, fixed interpretation to extract. Ask, what is this showing me? Or, what might this be revealing? That I need to see? Let the dream tell its story. Let it speak to you, rather than imposing your meaning onto it. Over time, patterns will emerge. Certain symbols will appear repeatedly in your dreams. Certain themes will become clear. Your unconscious is persistent. If you don't hear the message the first time, it will keep trying, becoming louder and more dramatic if necessary. Are you hearing the call from your dreams, or have you been dismissing these nightly messengers, treating them as meaningless distractions from your waking goals? The high-functioning millennial often falls into the trap of productivity at all costs. Sleep becomes merely a biological necessity rather than a sacred time of inner communication. Dreams become forgotten in the rush to the next day's tasks. But what if the wisdom you're seeking, the answers to your deepest questions about purpose, meaning, direction, fulfillment, are already within you, speaking to you every night? Your dreams are waiting for you to listen. Not to analyze, not to interpret, not to extract value, but simply to receive, to witness, to allow them to work their transformative magic in their own time, in their own way. If you've had a recurring dream that you've never understood, share it in the comments. Sometimes seeing our dreams through new eyes can reveal the messages they've been trying to deliver. This journey into your unconscious mind deserves to be shared. Tag a friend who's been struggling to find answers they might already have within them. There comes a point in every meaningful life where the old ways of being no longer work, where the carefully constructed identity begins to feel like a prison rather than a sanctuary. This is what Jung called the afternoon of life, or the second half of life. Not a chronological age, but a psychological turning point. It's often precipitated by a crisis, the career achievement that leaves you feeling unexpectedly empty, the relationship breakdown that shatters your self-image, or simply the quiet desperation that builds until you can no longer ignore it. It's the moment when you realize that everything you've been chasing may not be what your soul actually wants, that the goals handed to you by your family, your culture, your peers might not align with your deeper truth. This realization can be profoundly disorienting. The maps you've been following no longer lead to fulfillment. The strategies that brought you success no longer bring you peace. And it's here, in this uncomfortable space of uncertainty, that the practice of detachment becomes essential. Not detachment as in not caring. Not detachment as in becoming cold or distant. Not detachment as in giving up on life. Detachment as in stopping the constant controlling. Detachment as in releasing the grip on who you think you should be, what you think you should want, how you think your life should look. Detachment as in surrendering the need to have everything figured out. When you're no longer desperately trying to prove your worth through achievement, your shadow begins to emerge, not as a destructive force, but as a source of authentic energy. When you're no longer chasing validation from others, the archetypes loosen their hold on your life. You begin to act from your true center rather than from unconscious patterns. This is particularly vital for the high-functioning millennial, caught in the relentless trap of self-optimization. Always improving, always achieving, always becoming, always working on yourself, never simply being, never allowing the moment to be enough. I call this quiet detachment. The revolutionary act of stepping off the optimization treadmill and allowing yourself to exist without constant improvement. It's the radical choice to value being over doing, presence over productivity, authenticity over achievement. Look around at your most successful friends, the ones with the impressive careers, the beautiful homes, the picture-perfect relationships. How many of them are still empty inside? How many are still searching, still unsatisfied, despite checking all the boxes of conventional success? It's because they've mastered doing, but they've forgotten how to be. They've achieved everything the culture told them to want. They've lost touch with what their soul actually needs. I've seen it countless times. The friend who finally reaches the career pinnacle they've been working toward for a decade, only to find themselves thinking, is this it? The couple with the perfect home, perfect children, perfect lifestyle, secretly wondering why they still feel so disconnected. The individual who has done everything right, yet feels a gnawing emptiness they can't explain. These aren't failures of strategy or discipline. They're the inevitable results of pursuing external goals without internal alignment, of building a life based on others' definitions of success, rather than your own authentic desires. True detachment isn't passive, it's deeply active. It requires the courage to stop moving long enough to feel what's actually there, to face the discomfort that all the doing was designed to avoid, to ask the questions that have no easy answers. What would your life look like if you stopped trying to prove your worth? What would you do differently if you weren't seeking anyone's approval? What parts of your carefully curated identity could you let go of and still be you? In this space of quiet detachment, something miraculous happens. The authentic self, the self that exists beneath all the roles and expectations, begins to emerge, not as some perfect, enlightened being, but as a human with both light and shadow, both strength and vulnerability. This is self-respect in its truest form, not the inflated self-esteem that needs constant validation, but the quiet dignity that comes from being in right relationship with all of who you are. The internal knowing that you are worthy not because of what you do or what others think of you, but simply because you exist. From this place, you no longer chase, you no longer grasp, you no longer perform, you no longer twist yourself into shapes that aren't yours in the desperate attempt to be loved, accepted, or admired. And paradoxically, it's only from this place that true growth becomes possible. Not the frantic growth of ego achievement, but the organic growth of soul unfolding. The natural expansion that occurs when you're no longer fighting against your own nature, but allowing it to express itself freely. This is the growth of the oak tree that doesn't strive to become an oak tree. It simply allows the acorn to become what it already is in essence. This is the growth that comes not from force but from alignment, not from should but from could, not from external pressure but from internal permission. If you're tired of constantly doing and ready to remember how to simply be, give this video a thumbs up. It's time to get off the optimization treadmill. If this message resonates with you, leave a comment with the words, "I choose quiet detachment." A small public declaration of your commitment to authentic being over constant doing. When you face your shadow, respect your archetypes, and listen to your dreams, you begin the process that Jung called individuation, the journey of becoming psychologically whole, of integrating the fragmented parts of yourself into a unified, authentic being. This isn't about becoming perfect. It's not about eliminating your flaws or transcending your humanity. Quite the opposite. Individuation is about embracing the fullness of who you are, the light and the dark, the conscious and the unconscious, the rational and the intuitive, the masculine and the feminine, the personal and the collective. It's about integration, not elimination, reconciliation, not rejection, wholeness, not perfection. Imagine a symphony orchestra. Individuation isn't about having only violins play, no matter how beautiful they may sound. It's about allowing each instrument to contribute its unique voice, the mournful cello, the triumphant trumpet, the thundering timpani, and bringing them together in harmony. Think about someone who has spent their entire life forcing themselves to be a good person, suppressing their anger, denying their needs, silencing their truth for the sake of peace. What happens when this person finally acknowledges that anger, that selfishness, that raw truth? Do they become monsters? No. Paradoxically, they often become more peaceful, more generous, more authentic, because what we resist persists. But what we embrace transforms. The integrated shadow doesn't destroy, it enlivens. It brings vitality, creativity, honest power. It brings the energy that was previously consumed by repression back into conscious use. The acknowledged archetype doesn't possess, it informs. It brings depth, meaning, connection to something larger than the individual ego. When you recognize the rescuer operating in your life, you can consciously choose when to help and when to step back, rather than being compulsively driven to save everyone. The listened-to dream doesn't confuse, it illuminates. It brings insight, guidance, connection to the wisdom of the unconscious. This is what wholeness looks like. Not the absence of darkness, but the marriage of dark and light. Not the silencing of the unconscious, but the ongoing dialogue between conscious and unconscious. Jung observed that there is no light without shadow and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. This is a radical perspective in a culture obsessed with self-improvement and the pursuit of perfection. And here's the confronting question that individuation asks of you. Do you dare to look deep enough to know that you are not just a good person, that you contain multitudes, that within you lives not only generosity but also greed, not only compassion but also cruelty, not only courage but also cowardice, that the parts of yourself you've been running from, the anger, the neediness, the jealousy, the selfishness, the darkness, aren't evidence of your failure as a human, but essential aspects of your complete humanity. This isn't an invitation to act on your darkest impulses. It's an invitation to acknowledge that these impulses exist, to understand what they're trying to tell you, to integrate their energy in conscious ways rather than having them erupt unconsciously. The high-functioning millennial has often been conditioned to see themselves as the hero of their own story, always growing, always striving for good. But true heroism isn't about being flawless. It's about being whole. It's about having the courage to see yourself clearly, to embrace your contradictions, to hold the tension of opposites without rushing to resolve it. This is the true work of adulthood, not achievement, not acquisition, not approval, but integration wholeness, the ongoing journey of becoming all of who you are. And this journey isn't linear. It doesn't proceed in neat stages or predictable milestones. It's cyclical, spiraling, sometimes chaotic. It includes periods of confusion, regression, and disintegration, moments when it feels like everything is falling apart. Jung described this as the night sea journey, the challenging passage through darkness that precedes psychological rebirth. This isn't failure or setback. It's an essential part of the individuation process, the necessary disintegration that precedes a more authentic integration. Can you honor these periods in your life? Can you recognize that the times when you've felt most lost might actually be the times when the deepest transformation is occurring? Are you ready to see yourself completely? To embrace both your light and your shadow? Share one quality about yourself that you've been denying or pushing away. Naming it here is the first step toward integration. Want to go deeper into your own individuation journey? Double tap the like button and comment with "Ready for Wholeness" to signal your commitment to this path. If you've been waiting for the formula, the step-by-step guide, the proven method for transformation, I have disappointing news. Jung's psychology offers no formula, no cookie-cutter approach, no one-size-fits-all solution, no 5-step process that guarantees results in 30 days or your money back, because the journey of the soul cannot be standardized. Your unconscious is as unique as your fingerprint. Your shadow contains elements that are yours alone. Your dreams speak in a symbolic language specifically crafted for you. This is why so many self-help approaches ultimately fail. They offer generic solutions to deeply individual processes. They treat the psyche as a machine to be optimized rather than a mystery to be encountered. Jung's approach is radically different. It doesn't give you answers. It teaches you how to listen for the answers that are already within you. It doesn't provide a neat formula with predictable outcomes. It invites you into relationship with your unconscious, rather than trying to control it. It doesn't tell you what your dreams mean. According to some universal dictionary, it asks you to be curious about the specific symbols that appear in your dreams, to develop your own understanding of their significance. This approach requires patience in an age of instant gratification. It demands faith in process when we've been conditioned to expect immediate results. It asks for presence when we've become addicted to distraction. But for the millennial who has tried everything else, who has followed all the formulas, implemented all the hacks, optimized all the workflows, and still feels something essential is missing, this slower, deeper path may be the only one that leads to genuine transformation. So, where do you begin? Not by doing more, but by doing less. Not by seeking, but by listening. Not by forcing, but by allowing. Not by controlling, but by surrendering. Not by ascending, but by descending. Not by adding, but by removing. Start by creating space in your life for the unconscious to speak. Slow down enough to notice the patterns in your relationships, the symbols in your dreams, the emotions you're quick to dismiss. When anger arises, don't immediately suppress it or act it out. Pause. Feel it in your body. Ask it. What are you trying to tell me? What boundary needs to be drawn? What truth needs to be spoken? When you find yourself playing out an archetypal role, step back and observe. Ask, is this really me choosing? Or is this pattern choosing me? When a dream stays with you throughout the day, give it your attention. Write it down. Sit with its images. Allow its meaning to unfold, rather than demanding immediate understanding. This is not passive acceptance. It's active listening. It's engaged presence. It's the courageous willingness to be with what is, rather than constantly striving for what should be. And perhaps most importantly, for the high-functioning millennial, give yourself permission to pause the constant growth. The cultural mandate to be constantly evolving, always improving, always optimizing, always becoming, has created a generation afraid to simply exist, to be human in all its messiness, to have seasons of stillness and even regression. Jung would tell you that true growth isn't linear, it's cyclical. It includes periods of retreat, decay, and stillness, just as nature does. The seed grows not only by stretching toward the sun, but also by sending roots down into the dark earth. The tree knows when to produce leaves and when to let them fall. This natural rhythm has been lost in a culture obsessed with upward mobility, constant productivity, and endless self-improvement. We've forgotten that growth also requires fallow periods, times of rest, spaces of non-doing. When you allow yourself these periods, when you stop forcing, stop striving, stop trying to be better than you are, something miraculous happens. The psyche begins to naturally rebalance itself. The unconscious, no longer having to shout to be heard, can speak in gentler ways. You may discover that what you've been seeking through all your efforts, peace, fulfillment, meaning connect ion, was available all along, not as something to be achieved in the future, but as something to be realized in the present. You can start now. No one is judging you but you. There's no right way to begin this journey, no perfect first step. There's only the willingness to listen more deeply to yourself and to what Jung called the intelligence of the unconscious. If this message resonates with you, if you're tired of the constant pressure to grow and ready to simply listen to what your soul is trying to tell you, share this video with someone who needs to hear it too. Leave a comment about one way you'll create more space for listening in your life this week. Your intention might inspire others to do the same. The fact that you've stayed with me until this point tells me something important about you. You're different. In a culture obsessed with quick fixes and surface-level solutions, you've chosen to dive deeper. In a world that rewards constant doing, you're willing to consider the value of being. In an age that fears the unconscious, you're curious about what yours might have to say. This isn't random. This isn't coincidence. This is a calling, a pull toward wholeness that some feel and many ignore. Jung would say that your presence here is itself a message from your unconscious, a sign that something within you is ready for this journey. Not everyone is ready to face their shadow. Not everyone is prepared to recognize the archetypes that have been directing their lives. Not everyone wants to hear the messages their dreams have been trying to deliver. Not everyone is willing to surrender the identity they've carefully constructed in exchange for the authenticity that lies beneath it. But you are here. You've listened. You've considered. You've stayed. This doesn't mean the path ahead will be easy. Facing your shadow requires courage. Recognizing your archetypal patterns demands honesty. Listening to your dreams takes patience. The journey of individuation isn't a weekend workshop or a 21-day challenge. It's the work of a lifetime, cyclical, spiraling, sometimes chaotic, often challenging, and ultimately transformative in ways you cannot predict or control. But you've already taken the first step simply by being here, by being open to a different way of understanding yourself and your struggles. Remember, freedom doesn't come from eliminating your darkness. It comes from embracing all of who you are, from integrating the rejected parts of yourself, from allowing your full humanity to exist without shame or judgment. When you stop running from yourself, you can finally be yourself. Not the curated version designed for public consumption, but your whole self, messy, contradictory, and infinitely more alive than any persona could ever be. This is the promise of Jung's psychology. Not that you will become perfect, but that you will become whole. Not that you will eliminate suffering, but that you will find meaning within it. Not that you will transcend your humanity, but that you will embody it more fully. I'd love to hear from you. What aspects of your shadow have you been avoiding? What recurring dreams have been trying to speak to you? What archetypal patterns do you recognize in your life? Share in the comments below. This community understands. No one here is judging you. And if this video has given you something valuable, please like, subscribe, and share it with others who might be ready for this message. Not everyone is, and that's okay. But for those who are, these ideas can be the beginning of a profound transformation. Until next time, remember that the journey inward is the most important journey you'll ever take, and you don't have to take it alone. The shadow you've been running from contains the very gifts you've been seeking. The darkness you've been avoiding holds the light you need. You will never heal until you face your shadow. But when you do, you'll discover that healing isn't about becoming someone else. It's about becoming all of who you already are.